Before we jump into today's topic, a quick disclaimer. The stories and data we share come from the states that we practice in and the experiences that we personally had, which can differ greatly across our country and certainly the globe. This is not a professional advice show, so let's get comfy and talk about death.
Hello and welcome to Mort Mike,
a down-to-earth discussion on death and dying.
I'm Brandy.
I'm Sierra.
And I'm Red, and we are your dueling death doulas on today's episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now today's topic, if you guys have ever heard of it, is something that I have been reached out to by a few people inquiring about a new career path. And today is the discussion about End of Life Doulas. Now, to understand what an end-of-life doula is, we'll have to see where the word came from. So, a doula is a person who guides someone through their labor and delivery of a baby, so similar to like a midwife. And they are non-medical professionals that provide support mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually to the soon-to-be mothers. A shaman of life-giving, one could say. But in turn, a death doula provides the same support to grieving families and the soon-to-be deceased before, during, and after their death. They also go by a few different name variants, so death doula is kind of not common anymore. It's been taken over by End of Life Doula. You'll also hear death midwife as well. And there are two associations that oversee death doulas: the National End of Life Doula Alliance and the International End of Life Doula Association. So NIDA and INELDA. We're not going to be saying those every single time we want to talk about it. Through these organizations, you can get trained and certified as a death doula. However, no formal licensing is required to become a death doula. So, have you guys ever heard of death doulas before? Has this been like a concept that you're familiar with?
Yes, I am definitely familiar with death doulas. There's a community college, I believe, near me that was doing like a class, not like a whole course or anything, but they had like a class that somebody was running out of the community college. So
I believe I know the one you're talking about. Actually, that is nearby us.
Yeah. So I think one of the managers at my work took the course. They had an interesting perspective on it, where they thought that it wasn't helpful in any way, and that it was kind of. I know this is crazy, but he really thought that maybe it wasn't like. Not necessarily not helpful, but it wasn't just pertinent to us and what we do every day. I didn't take the course, but from the concept, I believe that has to be false. I think that maybe he just didn't go into it with the same mindset that maybe I would have went into it with or somebody else. But yeah, they definitely offer courses around our area and stuff, so... Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I had no idea what it was. I'll be so honest. I was like, oh, death doula. Like, okay, like a doily or something? Like, is this like a medical term or something I need to know? Sick. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not, like, unfamiliar with people helping people process, like, deaths and things and, like, sitting on death's doorstep, you know.
But maybe more so in like a clinical like therapist type of way or something.
I was gonna say, like, I was raised Catholic, so anytime somebody was like on their deathbeds in their house, like, you had to call the priest, and the priest would come in and sit with them and then pray with them as they you know, kick the bucket. Which I don't think. Well, I guess you're providing an emotional service as the priest to, you know, give you your last rites. It just seems like with the readings and everything that a death doula seems to be more extensive, helping more so with like the family, not just like the last moments, you know?
Yeah, it's super interesting. We will eventually get into like a exhaustive list of everything that they do, but they can take on a lot of different roles, which I found really fascinating as I researched more into this, because I felt, honestly, I had heard of them before, but when my friends had kept coming to me and asking like, hey, do you know anything about death dual work? Like, where would I go for it? I was like, I don't actually know jack all about this, and I feel like it's probably time, right? It's probably time to know.
It's time to learn.
It's time to learn. I think a good start, just to help people maybe understand a little bit more without going into the list just yet, what the difference is. We should differentiate doulas from medical staff, like hospice nurses, death care workers, like funeral directors, and then mental health professionals, like therapists. Like, they are very much different than those things. As like nurses and funeral directors and therapists, counselors, whatever, they are all either licensed or certified in different types of things, which death doulas are not. So anything that falls under those categories are things that really death doulas, either they can dabble in slightly or they don't do it all because they're not actually licensed to do those things. So they provide holistic care, not medical care. So when it comes to like legal stuff, like drawing up funeral contracts or disposition paperwork or anything like that, they can't do those things, but they can do like the holistic aspects of taking care of the dead and dying, which I think is just good to kind of start right off the top so people don't get confused, because they have such a wide berth on what they cover. I can see it being confusing potentially to people, because even I was getting confused halfway through like researching
it's
things.
Like that with normal doulas too, with birth doulas. Like, it is so confusing what they can and can't do, and like people who are, you know, preparing to give birth get confused and they end up with like midwives that aren't licensed correctly, or they think a doula is a midwife and they don't get proper medical care and things like that. So I can see why this would be even more confusing, because now it's like, oh, they're not even living? Like, what?
Yeah. No, it's definitely good. That was part of the reason I'm glad that we're doing an episode on this, just to be able to help people differentiate, because it can be a very valuable tool for people, but they need to know who to call, like when they need a specific need, you know?
Yeah, because I was trying to like read into it and everything and kind of get like a better idea, and it really felt like the end of life doulas are like babysitters almost for them, without being like a nanny. You know what I mean? Like, the nanny knows how to do CPR and do all the other fun medical stuff, but then your babysitter's there to be like, hey, you need snacks? Should we turn your cell phone plan off since you're probably not going to use it in the next month? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, that's honestly kind of hitting the nail on the head, actually. Like, they are a bit of like babysitters in a way, like glorified babysitters with, I mean, there's definitely a lot more knowledge in there, but
100%.
To give like a base comparison, that's not too far off.
Yeah, well, yeah, and babysitters are dealing with the children breaking toys, and you know, you're dealing with family members losing somebody that they like absolutely love, you know, like it's a lot heavier, but you get the drift. I guess when I was like looking into everything, I was kind of trying to figure out exactly like where this all started, or like where the idea of this came from. And it's really not a new concept. The part that's new about it is the fact that white people decided to give it a label, to put it bluntly. I know that it was mostly like, we were looking back, let's see, trying to remember exact dates, and that's just not my forte at all. The U.S. didn't even have like hospice care, like real like end of the life care, until like the 1970s. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? Like, officially licensed hospices were not a thing. Like, if you were dying, fucking good luck. Do it in a hospital. Do it at home. Go figure it out. Good luck. You know.
That's crazy to think that that's such a new concept. Like 50 years. Hospice has only been around for 50 years, and people have been dying for a lot longer than that.
I mean, it goes back to like the dead people are the responsibility of the family. Dead people are the responsibility of the living. Like, even if you are actively dying, you're actively dying, so you're kind of considered dead at that point, and you're not the concern of the hospital anymore, and people didn't give a crap about the dead. I still think that they don't to some degree, but yeah, I think that's a big part too.
I'm sure it probably went the same way of funeral directors, because like deaths were taken care of by the family, and the family was the one to arrange everything with the church and getting the body buried. And it wasn't until like cabinet makers were like, well, what if we started, transporting the body to church for you guys? And what if we started bringing flowers to your house for you guys? And like, people basically saw an in to be able to provide a service that would take the weight off of somebody else. And so maybe that like hospice also kind of stemmed from somewhere similar of like, well, what if you didn't have to do end of life care yourself? And like, what if we could provide comfort care in a way that would just let you guys begin the grieving process?
Yeah. Also, I'd be interested to wonder like when opiates and stuff became big, because that would probably be a big push for hospice as well, is like, oh, these people were always in pain when they were dying, but there wasn't anything we could do about it. Now we can pump them full of a bunch of opiates and make it a safer, nicer send-off.
100%. Create a safe space with some drugs, baby. Woohoo! Just kidding. A little death rape for you. Why not? You know? Yeah. I guess it wouldn't be. It'd be like well, I don't want to say a death K-hole, but, you know.
Oh my God.
I feel like right? That does happen. I feel like with mismanagement, that definitely happens.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and when you get like, some of these people are like old as dirt, and like things start hurting, you can't figure out why things are hurting, and instead of trying to like, you know, poke and prod and figure it out, you know, they're just like, hey, here's some drugs, man. Feel better.
Throw some codeine at it.
Yeah,
some
exactly.
At it.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
There's ghost in your blood. Do cocaine about it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was thinking when I was doing cocaine. I was like, I gotta get rid of the ghosts.
Gotta get rid of the ghosts. Listen, me too. Anyway, one thing that kind of brought a lot of like the end of life care kind of to the forefront of like at least the United States. And it was something that I kind of read into, and I did a very surface level read. So there's probably somebody out there that knows way more about this than I do. But I thought it was pretty interesting. But the AIDS epidemic actually brought a lot of like attention to people knowing that they're going to die and not receiving any care for it, right? Because there was a ton of like doctors and like funeral practitioners and people like that who, once somebody died of AIDS, refused them service. Right? Mm-hmm. They were like, you know, you're icky. I don't want to touch you, which is vastly incorrect and was terribly mishandled. And I completely blame the president, but that's a whole nother thing. They used to do like the die-ins where like they would just go and sit down and die somewhere. You know what I mean? Like to become an inconvenience. So that way they had to be taken care of. And you see hospice like start to take off and like actual, I can't pronounce the word because I'm dumb, but it's palliative care.
Palliative care.
Palliative care. I wanted to say paladin care because I play D&D. But you see like a huge emergence of that in the 1980s while this like AIDS epidemic is happening, because like these communities are having to figure out, you know, you're not taking care of them in the way that you had been in the past. What can I do? How can I help? You know, like I'm watching my cousins, my friends, my family is like die in front of me, and like, you know, they're dead and now my friends are dying. Like I have to help somehow. Right. And so people start like giving that kind of like doula effect to the people around them. You know, offering their houses, like trying to create like a safe space where these people can, you know, pass on, since, you know, medical professionals decided they didn't want to do it. You know,
that's crazy that essentially the failure of societies, organizations that are supposed to be there for people that are dead and dying, like shunning away people with a disease that we just didn't understand or didn't care to understand, really was like helped spearhead this like becoming more common. That's, I mean, it's tragic, yeah, but it has immaculate outcomes because hospice it's accessible for everybody now for the most part, and it's utilized like constantly. And I rarely had met with families that had negative things to say about the hospices that they worked with. Like they were always so integral in making it like feasible for these families to take care of their loved ones, because people still have to work. I mean, not everybody is retired and can take care of their loved ones as they die. So hospice is huge, but we'll find out during this episode, like there's only so much that hospice can do, and there's still very much a gap left by the things that they're just not able to be there for. So that's really fascinating. What a cool find.
You know what's worse, and I hate to throw this one out there, but I'm going to run it back because the U.S. ran back the exact same like practices in 2020 during COVID, but instead of, you know, gay people dying of AIDS, it was like low-income Black people dying of COVID. And that's kind of where you saw a huge emergence in they don't call themselves like death doula. I think, let me pull up the term here because it was super cool. Sacred grief practitioner is kind of the group that I was looking into. And they were specifically this woman came out during 2020, and she did a whole bunch of TED Talks and stuff too also about this. But she like watched her friends and family die, and she was like, what can I do to make this process easier for other people, because I already experienced it. And so she started this whole entire like movement in like the Black community of like, you know, here's what you should expect. Let's at least try to help you. Let me be your advocate. Let me do these things. And then like she started training other people in other like cities to try and also help them out, because like, you know, if you don't have healthcare, you were essentially ignored during like COVID and stuff, you know? And it was such a scary time that nobody like really understood what was happening, like what was contagious, what wasn't contagious, like, can I even see my loved one as they're passing? And like, you know, this woman like stepped up and like started doing it in like those type of communities. So yeah, US ran it back, part 2.
They'll repeat history whenever they can.
Yeah, right. Every time that there's a disease that can be easily understood, I swear to God.
But yeah, that was an interesting thing that I also found. So carry on. The US sucks.
Yeah.
It's a good point that you had mentioned of death doulas not really being a new concept, that it was essentially like a rebrand by white people, because, and this was hard. Like, while all of us researched, we pretty much all came to the conclusion that we really didn't have a lot of good written history about like death doulas throughout time, because it's absolutely been something that's already been there. Same thing as midwives. Like, there have been death doulas throughout time. It's just maybe not been something with a specific name that's shared across like country boundaries. And it's just, the term is new because that's what we have now branded it as, but there's always been a need, and 2, a need filled by certain people in certain societies of this, that there's somebody there to be able to help walk a family through. And this is like, this predates funeral directing, right?
100%.
Like, this absolutely does exist. It's just, especially when it's been in marginalized communities, and like, oh, that woo like witch doctor shit in that country, like, it's just always deemed something
like mystic level.
Yeah, it's like a mystic level type of thing. So it's just recently that like America has been able to like put it to term and give it more definitions, and obviously make its like associations and organizations that oversee it and things like that. So it's definitely been here before.
I think it's fascinating too that, you know, white people in America give this name to this practice that's been happening for like ever, right? And then immediately made 2 associations, started charging for classes, and then was like, hey, now you can charge people for your service. You know what I mean? Like, not to be cynical or
Capitalism,
anything.
No, it's true.
But like,
compassion is illegal here. Like, it really feels like it. It feels like in order to be compassionate, you got to do 2 classes, and you got to like, it almost seems like this is common sense. Every family should have a death doula. Like, there should be somebody in your family that is willing and able to take that on, because I'm sure that that's how it always was, you know, and I'm sure it was the matriarch, but like, it just feels like any opportunity to turn anything into a capitalistic affair, even compassion, will happen in this country.
Oh, for sure.
Well, and like
1000%.
going back to your like manager who like took this class on compassion and things like that, and then immediately was like, yeah, that was useless and a waste of money. Like, damn.
Exactly. It's immoral to be compassionate somehow. Like, that's where we're at in society.
Well, it's not profitable. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like this could have been very, so I'm sure you guys are familiar with just like little volunteer groups, and like here, for example, like the Moose Lodge, or the Rotary Club, or like all those like community-based clubs that are available pretty much everywhere. Everywhere's got some version of it. I feel like this would have made a great like type of volunteer organization thing instead, that like does fundraisers for money, and then like is able to like be called and reached out to, and because usually people that are a part of like Rotary clubs and things like that, they're older, they are retired, they don't have like full-time jobs, and so they're able to go out and be parts of things that are fundraising and like do volunteer work for the rest of the community. I feel like this would have been a perfect thing for a just community organized volunteer group of the people that have been around the longest to be able to step in and give this type of help to others.
100%.
I mean, and that's what they say. Older people say it all the time, that like, you don't rely on your children to take care of you when you die or when you're dying. You should rely on the people that you've built community with. Now, if that is your children, that's great. And that is how it should be, of course. And that would be ideal. But also, not everybody has children. And building a community is what is going to get you through. That community will be the same age with you. And also, old people say, make friends with people that are younger than you as well. And maybe not extremely younger than you, because that might be inappropriate. But
hey, yo,
make friends with people. If you're in your 60s, make friends with people that are in their 40s. You know what I mean? Like, try and keep yourself fresh, because that is like what you're saying, that's the community that you're going to be in. And like, we could have this opportunity for these great community developments, but again, like, that's just not where we're at in society anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately. Now that we've kind of gotten a little base understanding of what a death doula is and like how the impact can potentially be, I will go through a little bit of what a function of an end of life doula is and what they can provide. Now, keeping in mind that not every doula is one size fits all. Every doula has their own list of things that they can provide, that they choose to provide. So not all doulas are going to do all of these things, but they could potentially do these things, essentially. And this is
customize your death experience.
Yeah, customize your death experience for sure. And this is directly from INELDA's site. So they state, and I quote, doulas serve by providing the opportunity to speak openly and frankly about death and dying, to talk about creating an advanced care directive, explore the meaning of the dying person's life and legacy, discuss and support end-of-life care planning, incorporate traditions or create new rituals to mark special moments, encourage appropriate ways of touching the dying person, assist with physical and practical care to ease the burden on the caregivers, provide respite for exhausted caregivers, explain the signs and symptoms of the dying process, process the emotions and experiences with loved ones, support the cultural, religious, and spiritual practices of all involved, and guiding people through the early stages of grieving. And even farther than that, they could potentially also provide death-curious conversations, educations on planning for end-of-life, physiological death education, end-of-life planning, reprocessing sessions, scribing end-of-life planning, end-of-life projects, connected community resources, non-medical comfort care, and navigating through the complexities of the dying process. So they do have a very wide range of things that they can do. And what I noticed as I went through these, and it very much was, these are all things that potentially, and I use that word specifically, potentially, you could get from other things, right? You could be getting these things from funeral directors or from hospice nurses or from therapists, but you would be going to multiple different avenues in order to get them, and it might not be like a full experience of them, right? So I think that it was really important to see the connection that they can make. Essentially, like, death doulas are able to connect all of the different death care aspects in someone's life. They can make the connection between these. They can be that go-between, which is honestly a huge missing piece of the puzzle during death care.
Yeah, I agree. I think that having like somebody there who it just kind of touches all the avenues, so you have like one main source, is one of the most helpful things you can do, because having to explain to like 6-7 different people like the situation, or explain your loved ones like issues or whatever, is like so exhausting and draining. And then just having one person who you're like knows everything, is there at the house, sees what's going on, helps out with what's going on, and then you can just directly ask them questions, is just like, so much easier. It's like having your own personal assistant, your own secretary, your death secretary.
A death secretary. Yeah, it's a death secretary. You absolutely got it 100% correct.
Yeah.
And I feel like they also probably have, if we're going to talk about like the perception of them, when people think about a funeral director, there is like an image that comes to mind, like the lurch style person, like they're not necessarily as approachable, as much of a friendly face. Hospice nurses like could be a little more approachable, but they're going to be way more medical professional. And like a death doula has the unique opportunity of being just like your neighborhood friendly Spider-Man, right? Oh. Like somebody that is easy to talk to and like sit down and just like be a person with you, even though obviously like funeral directors and hospice workers are too. But
they also have a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And their job is to the family.
They're coordinators. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a very unique aspect that death doulas can come in and be for these families, is just a more approachable face to death, which is extremely needed in society today with how death denying we are, how much we want to separate ourselves from it. If they can soften the blow, that like, especially seeing that was one of the first things that they mentioned on their site of one of the things that they can do is just like creating a conversation about death. How huge is it? That is literally why we made this podcast.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Are we like we're like the radio host versions of doulas. We're not here to help you, but we'll just throw some facts at you.
Pretty much.
I can't massage grandpa's feet while he's dying or do your laundry, but hey.
Oh, that's such a big one, dude.
Those are literally two of the worst things I could possibly think of having to do for somebody. Now I don't want anything to do with being a death doula. Those are the worst things you could have said. Rub some old dude's feet.
No, you put that in your deluxe package. That's what you do.
Yeah.
When I first started this off, when I was looking into it and whatnot, I was like, these death doulas are just like money grabbing white people who just want to like see what they can capitalize on, blah blah blah. But like, since if you look at it from like a bigger perspective and you're like, you know, these people have been around forever, especially right now, trying to navigate the capitalist like system of funerals, having somebody as your advocate is kind of like the best thing you can do, because
for sure,
there's so many like boxes you got to check when somebody's like, you know, getting there, right? Like, did I turn off your internet? Did I turn off your other services? Or like once they've passed and stuff and you have to like start sending in the forms of like, this person is dead, you know, like there's so many like things that you just don't know to think about. Mm-hmm. I already said it earlier, but the one that like really killed me, when one of my friends like dads, this was years ago by the way, passed away, her and her mom completely didn't think to turn his cell phone off, like his business phone.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it was just racking up a bill after bill after bill, and like it wasn't on auto pay or anything, and so like fucking AT&T was just like, you guys owe us $600. And they were like, what the fuck? He's been dead forever. He hasn't used any like minutes, back when minutes were a thing. And they were like, oh no, that's the service for just using the phone. And it was like a whole ordeal, and like AT&T was not very nice about it. So like having somebody to be like, hey, did you know that this is a thing that you're going to have to deal with when this person is dead, would be fucking awesome. You know, get a little checkbox.
Absolutely. No, though, that is an extremely valuable thing, because we had a little something similar at the funeral home of just like, here's just some financial related stuff and estate related stuff that you might need to go through. But it was such a small list there, especially in today with like all the subscription services and everything that
did you cancel Grandpa's Netflix?
Money. No, Grandpa's well, especially older people, they like to set up like donations sometimes to organizations they like that just automatically deduct, and so it's like, oh shit, all these different things that Grandma was sending money out to, ASPCA and the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I don't know, but whatever.
Hell yeah. Like, cancel Grandma's League of Legends account.
But no, it would be extremely valuable to have somebody to fill that in. Dude, Grandma was sweaty.
Grandma was sweaty. Grandma died doing what she loved.
Somebody make sure they delete Grandma's Reddit. That shouldn't have even existed to begin with.
Oh god,
damn, she Grandma's really was racist.
No,
just kidding. Are those feet pics of Grandma?
Oh my god, Grandma's OnlyFans, no.
No, yeah. Oh, cancel Grandma's OnlyFans. Only Grands.
Only Grands is crazy.
Oh, that's terrible.
So say that this interests you, that you've heard us talking about death doulas, end-of-life doulas, and maybe you feel a calling to work with the dying and their families in their time of need. There are plenty of websites out there that offer training and certification outside of the aforementioned organizations, and some might even be local to you. Like we mentioned, we have one that's close to us. Any metropolitan area probably has, and like check colleges too. Sometimes they definitely have a class near you, closer to home than you think. The cost of these courses can vary widely depending on which organization that you work with, and I saw a very vast range, some going as low as $200 and some being as high as $1,000 for the course. But the good thing is some sites actually even offer scholarships, so you might be able to get like a discounted rate if you like send in whatever their essay is or something like that when you apply for it. Many of the organizations I checked only grant the certification for a 3-year period before renewal is required. And some also had a requisite to participate in continued education credits every year. So those are good things. You should never be able to get a certification for life for something this important. It should mandate a renewal period for sure. And to see some actually like demanding that you do educational credits, like continued ed, is also huge, because there's always new information coming out and better ways to do your practice. So that was really heartening for me to see that. But something I do want to mention is that this career is not yet legally overseen. So certification is not required by law to be a doula, but it obviously lends more credence to your practice and instills way more faith from your clients to become certified. So what can a death doula expect to make financially? I very much struggled to find good resources for this, because just like with how much it costs to even get certified, it ranges greatly what somebody can charge for their services as a death doula. It could be like an hourly rate, or it could be a package-based pricing system. Many of the local doulas that I tried to reach out to just to ask some questions didn't really have websites, or if they did, they didn't put their pricing on the website. Well, the one I was able to find and like had all of their price structure laid out on their website, it had charges that ranged from like $25 an hour to $100 an hour, and that just depended on like the services provided. So like their lower packages were like, oh, consultation, like I'm just here to talk you through some things, up to like their deluxe packages that were like, I'm going to do in-home care. I will do like this many hours of check-in each day, or this many hours a week coming to take care of things. So it really depends on what you're trying to offer, what your pricing structure could be. So being a death doula, you can actually face some hardships in being allowed to practice. So essentially this doula that practices out in Indiana had a lawsuit filed against her because someone was saying that she's like, there was a complaint made that her business was not a licensed funeral home. And so knowing what we know now about doulas, yes, she is not trying to be a funeral home. And the state had like, I guess, ordered her to stop taking clients without getting like a license to be a funeral director and license to be a funeral home.
That's so weird. I guess it depends on what she was doing.
Well, and that is true. So like without knowing the full details on either side, I could see a salty funeral home hearing about what she did and be like, no, she's crossing boundaries into like funeral home territory, and like made a complaint anonymously against her, or maybe a pissed off client, who knows. But that's definitely not what a doula does. And fortunately, she won the preliminary part of the lawsuit, but like that sucks that there are salty people out there that, especially in surrounding career paths, that could find problems with doulas and would make complaints. Now, if she was, unlawfully starting to step into the wrong aspects, because that's the part that is tricky, because there's so much close to abutting to what other careers do that are licensed. Like if you say the wrong thing, that could really get you in a lot of hot water, because that is no longer in your career path. You have to go to school for that. You have to get licensed for it. But if you're practicing within the realms of what your job is and what you've stated that you've come to do, then like you're fine. It just sucks that it's so like walking a tightrope, essentially, to make sure that you're not overstepping your bounds. Because God forbid somebody in the funeral industry is just like, I don't fucking like that somebody's doing something similar to what I'm doing, so I'm gonna complain about them.
Oh, that sounds super familiar.
Whereas like they literally could just come together and work together because they both benefit each other, but yet, alas.
Because that was something that was always made very clear while I was working in the funeral industry, was that like we need to make good partnerships with hospice because we can feed into each other. One, we can recommend good hospices for the families that we serve. Like if they come in for pre-arrangements and like they ask the questions like, oh, this hospice has always been really good to the families that we've worked with. Here's a good hospice, and like give them very informative tips on what to do in that respect. And same thing, like hospices can be like, hey, we've interacted with this funeral home and then they've taken very good care of people, like go to them. Like this can all feed into each other and we could learn to work together.
If only.
Yeah, there's some old heads that hang on a little too long with bad opinions about things, and I feel like that's why we're kind of where we're at now. With all that being said, I would be remiss not to take the time to be a negative Nancy for just a moment about death doulas. So to be that funeral director, that old head for just a moment, because like I won't lie, when I first heard about death doulas, I was confused about it, and it made me feel threatened that like this sounds like they're trying to do parts of my job and I don't like that. But that's before I took the time to like learn what it was. And I obviously have my current stance now, which is that it's a very valuable thing for people, but it is also good to inform people on things that they need to be wary of, to be watchful of. So with end of life doulas being an unregulated profession, meaning like there's no like government board or government agency overseeing them. Like they just have like the alliances and like organizations that they have created, but there's no government board that oversees them and like makes them get licensing and makes sure they're keeping up on their licensing and that type of thing. They have no legal requirement or a managed branch of labor government overseeing them. That is very important to note. So to put that into perspective, you need to pass a board examination and get a license and have a degree for most states as a funeral director in order to be one. Like you have to have all of those things under your belt, and that's not even mentioning like all of the different regulations that oversee like the funeral home itself and the license you need for that. And hospice nurses also need like licensing. You need licensing to cut hair. Like, there's a lot of different things that have licensing, but this does not. And they just offer certifications. Yet again, you don't have to have one to even be a doula. You can get certifications for anything. You can get a certification to be a priest or a bartender. But this is still a good thing. Like I do say in favor of like INELDA and NIDA that like they offer these certifications. It's better to have an educated workforce, but at least they have the certification available. I just think that there's a lot that needs to be added for it to be more well-rounded, essentially, because like this is just a stranger essentially deciding that they're going to be doing this job and they are going to be around you and your family during one of the most difficult times in your life. They are coming into your home. You are allowing them to take care of your loved one, and that is a very vulnerable like position for these people to be in, and very easy for them to be taken advantage of, or if you are not educated, lead them in the wrong direction for things because you don't actually know the answers, and therefore you're giving them the wrong answers.
They're mentally taking care of your loved one and you by providing you insight and all of those things. So it's even heavier than like just maybe a nurse comes in, just a body lift. It's her first day or whatever. Yeah, like, you know.
Because I mean, it's since it's so encompassing, that's why I would want like the aspect of licensing. So licensing, when you get licensed, you have to do like background checks and stuff like that. And so like I think that would be really valuable to have, especially with somebody that's coming in to your lives like that. Yeah. Like it's an added layer of protection. And like I already mentioned, like the overextending themselves into other fields, like the blurred boundaries of being a death doula, if they are the common man won't know when they're overstepping, and that could be problematic too. So I want to mention those things just because it is important. Like, it's good to look into reviews and recommendations on, because that's really all you can go by. It's like, yeah, you can see if they have the certification, but like looking into reviews and recommendations is going to be the best thing you can do with them at this point, because there's not an overseeing government board. And just be really wary if you are picking one, to make sure you get like somebody that is worth their salt. Not to say that you shouldn't get a doula that's not certified, but I feel like if you're going to commit to this career, which is it's not a career to take lightly, you should try to have the best one that's out there, not just somebody that's like deciding to do it and says that, oh, I have no education in this, you know?
Yeah, I'd be worried about the person's motivations that aren't certified but are trying to do a job, an independent job.
Very, very true. So this is not a good cash grab type job to get into. Like, if you're looking to do this and like just try to make a quick buck, it's not. So anybody that has any experience with like having a job that relies heavily on like networking and social media, like, you know that you have to put yourself out there a lot, and you have to do a lot of legwork to become like a household name and like to get known so people come to you, because this is something that not a lot of people can afford, because this isn't covered by insurance. This isn't covered by anything. This is out of pocket expenses. That can be really expensive when somebody already has to worry about medical care and funeral arrangements. To have that extra however much money is not going to be very available for a lot of people. Only like affluential households are going to be able to afford this type of thing. So without like the ability to network yourself, you are not going to make a lot of money doing this. Like, I would very much not recommend to drop your job just in order to, out of the blue, become a death doula either. So that's something worth noting.
Yeah. So I'm going to plug the book that I read about a death doula. It's fictional. It's called The Collected Regrets of Clover. I'd have to look up the author. I can't remember their name, but it's the only one out there by that name, I'm sure. But in that, the author explains why she can do this job, because she like lives in New York City and she's a death doula, and she only takes on however many clients. Like, she'll take on one at a time, and then she'll have a break in between so that she has like, you know, it's a big, heavy job. She needs the time to recover herself. So the only reason she can do it is because like the person who took care of her died and left her this apartment that's paid off.
Ah, gotcha. Yep.
So that's like, it's very
job,
yeah,
or daddy's money.
Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily like a Nepo baby situation. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. And it makes sense, but it was just like, okay, so this does actually make sense, and I can buy into this, because how the hell is this girl living in New York being a death doula by herself? Like, no way. But yeah, so you got to explain it somehow, because they're definitely not making a lot of money.
If anybody wants to read that, that is The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Brammer. Mickey Brammer is the author for that. No problem. What do you want to talk more about that book? What was the vibe for it?
Oh my god, it was so good. So I read it for a book club. Very good book club book if you've got one to promote to your friends. It follows Clover, who is a death doula in New York City. She has just experienced her own loss. So the person that took care of her has passed away, and really was the person that like she was the closest with in this world, was her best friend kind of situation. I believe it was her grandfather, and he passes away while she's kind of in the middle of taking on these different jobs, and she's starting to have a lot of realizations about herself. She's a loner kind of type. And I think a lot of people that work in the death industry kind of fall into that, where they like their alone time, and they maybe think they deserve to be alone a lot, because they spend so much time with the dead and dying. So she's a very, very good character. Loved watching her develop through the book. And, she, ends up being a death doula for somebody who has lots of good stories and also a really hot nephew. So you know where it can go from there.
Oh my.
No, it's really good, and it's not like heavy on the romance, but there's definitely like an aspect of the romance that helps her kind of like open up and discover why she kind of didn't really give herself a chance through life, and why she kind of isolated herself and things like that. And she has witnessed a lot of death through her life, so that was a big reason why she pushed into being a death doula. And I could see myself in her, and I could see a lot of my friends who work in death care in Clover, and I could tell that I don't know if the author worked in death care in any way, but they definitely seem like they did, because it was very much like, oh wow, like I can see myself in her so much.
Some insider knowledge, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you know something, buddy.
No, I have to add that to my list of books, because that sounds really interesting. We should do a book club episode where we each read a death book and bring it up at some point.
I love that. And I already have 2 at the ready.
Love it.
Hell yeah. Okay,
fun.
We'll have to add that to a future episode. But all of my negative shit out of the way, like I don't want that to poison anybody's thoughts about it. I just want it to be more of like just make sure you're looking out for red flags, and just be cautious. Just with anything. You wouldn't pick a funeral home that's got a 2-star rating on Google. You know, it's the same thing. Do your research and bring somebody into your life that's going to be doing it for the right reasons, which is always for the families and for the dead and dying. Of course, there's going to be like funeral directors who are going to be just salty about parts of their life work being taken away from them, since we're already being made out to be villains. So that's why I was like sus about it at first. And I'm sure there's a lot of other funeral directors out there feeling very much the same. Because like we always we look at ourselves as like, oh, we're the guardians of the dead, and we don't like people encroaching on that. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of value to be had. And just like Brandy was saying, like, why don't we share the glory of taking care of those in our communities that are going through this?
We all have a place. We absolutely all have a place in it. It doesn't just belong to one group. You know, we can all be there. That's what we've lost. I keep going. Today's society, like an old grandma, but like, fuck man, it's really true. Like, we really have lost the community aspect, and I would love to see us get back to that. And I think that death doulas are a big part of the community that we really need.
I think so too, especially anything that can get families involved in death. And opening up that line of communication is insanely important, because it can be super scary for people that have feared death their entire life. They put it off and they put it off until it's now the final moments and everything is hitting like a freight train. Like, for somebody to be able to step in and be that friendly face and get them more involved, not only just giving them information to be able to talk about it, and like just being able to like, hey, it's okay to touch grandpa while he's dying. Like, it's okay to do these things. Mm-hmm. Bringing it to a community-centric approach is huge. And like that makes huge connections between the families and everything around them. Cannot say this more, lessening the burden of the care on the families, because hospice will come and check in, but they're not going to sit there with grandpa and watch his favorite shows with him while you need to go to work.
They've got 100 other things to do.
Yeah, that's huge that they can do that. Like, being able to be a death midwife and give guidance to these people is an extremely, extremely valuable career. And we need a lot more good people in it, especially to make good names for death doulas, and to be able to make that a more accessible thing. Like, I think that as it grows and becomes a more popular concept, it could easily be something that becomes like government regulated, or I don't know, pairs with hospice, and it becomes like a thing that hospices can be like, oh, okay, before we send out the hospice nurses, here's the like accompanying death doula to come with them, you know. Like, it could definitely be something, I think, that gets much bigger, much more important for everybody. I don't know. I think so highly of death doulas now, and I'd love to see it be something that has an explosion of popularity, because it is necessary.
I agree. agree. Yeah, I was going to say, closing statements here. They're like the brokers of death. You know what I mean? Like, they're going between everybody for you, so that way you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that we do it for real estate. We do it for banking. We might as well do it for dead people.
For sure. No, I love that. The go-betweens, the gophers, the death gophers.
That's us.
And I think it's a beautiful balance, you know. Death doula might be a new term, but doula in and of itself is a beautiful term. And so, you know, you have your birth doulas, you have your death doulas. We have so many people through life. I have my therapist. Shouts out to Allie. She's my queen. And we all need somebody, you know, in every stage of our life, whether it's to help usher us into the world or help usher us out of it.
Hell yeah.
That was beautiful. Wow.
Snaps.
I think that sums it up perfectly. So with that, that'll be all this week on Mort Mike. Connect with us on our socials at Facebook and YouTube at Mort Mike Podcast. Or if you have any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear about or burning questions about death, shoot us an email at mortmikepodcast@gmail.com.
A huge thanks to Marson Music for our theme Deputies of Death and Macklin Legan for our custom icons and banners.
Be sure to tune in the first Thursday of every month for more casual discussions on death. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Mort Mike.
Bye.
Bye.